We're here today to talk about an important issue, and that is the trade remedy modernization that we believe needs to be changed in Canada. This is an antiquated system that we have. It's about 20 years old. It's outdated, and the system does not reflect the global realities of trade today. And so we're urging the federal government to immediately adopt the Trade Remedy Modernization Plan that's been put forward by the Canadian Steel Producers Association. The other aspect of today's discussion, there are a couple, but first of all, we're all well aware of a recent Canadian International Trade Tribunal ruling that despite dumping taking place in Canada, and despite the Canadian Border Services finding that steel has been dumped, and that being acknowledged by the CITT found in a more recent ruling, or I believe it was in just earlier this month, that there was no harm done to the steel industry, and in particular to SR Steel. And we all know that there is harm being done to Canadian steel workers by dumping of foreign steel in Canada. We have in Ontario 3 fully integrated steel producers, 2 of which are in CCAA protection right now, going through a very, very difficult restructuring. We know that suppliers that also provide jobs for people in communities across Ontario are losing their livelihoods. They're closing their businesses. They're laying off workers. We know that there is harm being done, and yet an organization like the CITT, makes a ruling and denies that there's harm being done to the industry, and in particular to SR Steel Algoma. So it's time for some immediate changes in the trade remedy system, which is outdated and antiquated, as I've indicated. The plan calls for much more transparency and accountability of those who are bringing steel into Ontario and into Canada, for that matter. That there's more inspections, there's more data provided. We also have other issues around the length of time that it takes for these rulings to occur. That dumping continues while workers and the businesses here in this country suffer. And so we need a more timely process. We also have issues around the onus, that it becomes the onus of the company or the business here that's been harmed to go out and try to get the evidence and prove what the pricing is in the other countries, so that they can demonstrate to the Canadian government and to the trade tribunal that they are in fact being harmed. And I think it's an unreasonable expectation to ask companies here to do that. They don't necessarily have access to the pricing of all steel in other jurisdictions. And so there really needs to be a better look at the remedy modernization to ensure that it reflects today's global trading realities. We're also dealing with state-owned industry in other countries where the state heavily subsidizes or operates these steel industries and picks the price for all intents purposes to put their steel into other countries, and in effect dumps the steel at well below what the actual cost of production is, because it's state-owned. They have the luxury of doing that. We also know that Canadians value the environment, and placing a price on carbon or a cap and trade system is a topic of conversation in this country, and we are moving in that direction. Well, we know that foreign producers, many of them, when they produce a ton of steel, they produce 6 times the carbon per ton of steel than in Canada. And when you add transportation costs onto that, we're talking about 10 times the carbon output of emissions in contrast to Canadian steel producers. So we can't have all of these rules in Canada for Canadian producers, allow other countries' companies to have virtually no rules and no regulations and be state subsidized and dump their steel into Canada, and ask Canadian steel producers why they can't compete. Because they can compete if there was fair trade. And so we're calling on the federal government, and I know that our government has a role to play as well. We're doing everything that we can to help support the modernization plan here locally, to support capital investments to continue to make the mill efficient. SR Steel Algoma is one of the most efficient mills in North America, and it can compete on a level playing field. We know that. And so the other aspect of today's event is we're launching a website called fairtradeforsteel.ca. You can find this website obviously online. You can go on and take a look at the contents that is there. We're going to just take a look at a few of the elements of this site here in a second, because we want to also be able to have folks sign the petition that's online. So if I can get the
He's over there.
tech
Dave.
support to the petition. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the petition, and it's fairly concise and it's pretty clear. We don't want anybody to be confused by it. We want them to understand clearly exactly what they're signing their name to and what we're asking them to do. So I'm just going to read it for the benefit of the media. Whereas the Canadian steel industry directly employs over 20,000 workers and their jobs are being seriously threatened by the dumping of foreign steel, and whereas trade remedy modernization is urgently needed to create fair trade for Canadian steel, we, the undersigned, petition the Government of Canada to immediately adopt the Canadian Steel Producers Association's Trade Remedy Modernization Plan to ensure fair trade for Canadian steel. And you can put your name here, address, and your information, and then you just simply click submit at the bottom. And this is something that we hope takes off, obviously, not only in Sault Ste. Marie and Ontario, but right across the country, so that all elected representatives understand the gravity of the situation in this country when it comes to steel producer jobs. Now, you should also know that I've had a meeting as well with Mayor Provenzano and with MP Terry Sheehan. I spoke to Terry on the phone last evening. I know he has something to say about this as well. I know he's very supportive of this. He's raised this issue at his federal Northern Caucus. It is their top issue, and I know he'll tell you that. So he is continuing to work through the channels in his government with his respective ministers, as I am with our government. So I want to thank you all for coming here today. Again, the purpose of today is to urge the federal government to change the trade remedy system in Canada, which is outdated, it's broken, it doesn't work, it doesn't reflect the global realities of trading today. We want to protect Canadian jobs, but we're urging these changes not in a way that is disadvantaging other producers or in other countries. We're talking about fair trade. That's what we don't have. I think we understand that free trade is a reality. We support free trade, but we want fair trade. And that's not what we have in Canada today. We do not have fair trade, and that's what we need. So urging all folks in Sault Ste. Marie to go online, sign the petition, and obviously citizens of this country, we're asking them to sign the petition as well to show their support for the over 20,000 direct steel jobs in Canada.
How soon do you expect to meet with the federal government?
Well, I know that the MP is meeting with the federal counterparts as we speak on an ongoing basis, has had conversations over the last week or so. They're back in session as now, will be back in session shortly, but I have raised this issue as well with my colleagues. We had a meeting in Toronto 10 days ago or so. SR was present, as were 4 ministries represented by our government and representatives from the Premier's office as well to talk about this, and we certainly appreciate the information that's being shared by the unions and the companies to raise awareness of the strategy that we need to put together to help strengthen Canadian steel producers and protect the jobs that are in this country and in this city.